Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari, and it's time again for another one of my 24-hour reading a series vlog things. And in this one, I am going to be reading the Grishaverse. The Grishaverse is a little bit different than the other ones I've done because it's a series, but it's a series of multiple series, if that makes sense. First off, we have the, what is this, Shadow and Bone trilogy. So I'll be reading this first, and then it goes into the Six of Crows Duology, which I have Crooked Kingdom here, but I think I have Six of Crows on my Kindle. I have it somewhere, but we'll buy it if I have to. And then the final one is, I don't know what this is. The King of Scars duology. It's the last duology in the Grishaverse, and it covers characters from both of these. I don't know that I'm actually going to get to these, but I'm hoping to get to at least these 5. There are 7 books total. I am trying to get through as many of these as I possibly can, but I don't think I'm going to get through all 7 because they are kind of long. But I am going to start out with Shadow and Bone, which I haven't taken out of here because I haven't removed the plastic yet, but I will here in just a second. And I will come back and tell you how it went once I am done with Shadow and Bone. Alright, I just finished Shadow and Bone, and honestly this was just like super generic young adult fantasy. I've read this romance before, and it didn't do anything for me. It wasn't bad. Like, Leigh Bardugo's writing is great. The story itself wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything new. You basically have these 2 little kids who grew up together in an orphanage, and now they're adults together in the army. One's a tracker. The guy's a tracker, the girl's a cartographer, a map maker, and they're going through this blackness that's got creatures in it. And they get attacked, and he's about to die, and she screams, and magic. And this is magic that she was tested for as a little kid. They were both tested for, and they're like, why weren't you tested? And she was like, I was tested. And she's the chosen one, basically. And so she goes off to the capital and is treated like a princess and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, there's intrigue and love triangles. Love V's, I'm sorry, it's not a triangle. There's intrigue and there's love V's, and she's plain and boring, and everyone around her is beautiful, but once she looks through the eyes of the men who observe her, she's beautiful too. Like I said, it was super generic. But I didn't hate it. It's gonna be a 3-star. It wasn't bad super generic, it was just fine super generic. So I guess I'm just gonna move on to Siege and Storm because I have nothing to say about this book outside of it being generic, which I've said like 6 or 7 times now. So moving on to Siege and Storm, I'll be back in a little bit. Oh, I forgot to tell you, we're at 3 hours and 12 minutes. Okay, I have finished Siege and Storm. It feels like a middle book. The romance in this isn't so annoying as it was in the first book. I guess it wasn't really annoying in the first book, it was just predictable in the first book. And the romance in the series still isn't really doing anything for me. And it just feels like Leigh Bardugo is not particularly interested in the romance of the series, but felt like she had to put it in there because it's not anything new, it's not original, it's not particularly good, but the rest of the world building is. So, I don't know. In this book we have figured out that she needs like 3 different animal bones to become like super all-powerful. They may turn her into a really bad guy, maybe not. Still not really sure about that, but at the end of the first book, she got the first part, which was a antlers that she wears as a necklace. And then in this book, she's got the scales from a sea serpent, which she got at the beginning of the book. And then in the third book, it looks like she needs the bones of a phoenix. I don't know, a firebird. And then she'll become all powerful, and we don't know what's going to happen if she becomes all powerful. She's either going to be able to defeat the Darkling or become even more evil than he is. I hope she becomes more evil, but I really doubt that's what's going to happen, considering this is somewhat traditional young adult fantasy. I didn't hate it. It's still 3 stars. There wasn't anything special about that. It really suffered from middle book syndrome. As far as time goes, I figured out how to make this do laps. So I'm at 7 hours in 7 minutes, and that took me 3 hours and 55 minutes to read this. Kind of bored with it, but it is a little bit longer, so I guess it makes sense. I'm gonna move on to whatever the third book is. Okay, I finished Rune and Rising, and I guess it was okay. The series overall is getting a 3-star. What even happened in here? So we have the conclusion to the story, and the conclusion didn't really bother me. I'm not really gonna say what it is, because some people might still want to read this, and then if you know what the if you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. So it was like a convenient conclusion. A lot of people didn't like it. It didn't super bother me. I've had worse, and I'm not surprised that she ended up with Mal, and I guess that is a spoiler, but the romance in this series sucks anyway, so you guys could just be spoiled about that. It makes sense that she ends up with Mal. Like, the start and end of every book is like a boy and a girl, and it's about Elena and Mal. So they're obviously going to end up together. He's just not... he's not a good love interest. The problem with him is, like, at the beginning, in the first book, he ignores her, and he's like interested in all these other girls, and he doesn't, he treats Elena like a best friend. He doesn't really love her or realize that she's the one for him until she has power. In the second book, we get where he's like, we can't ever work together because you're all powerful and you don't need a plain boring human like me, blah 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 blah. So and then the third book, in the conclusion, she loses all her power, and so now they can be in a relationship together. Basically, he's making it about him, where if he's the dominant person, the one with skills in the relationship could work. If she's unhappy, it's okay, as long as he's happy and doing what he wants to do. But when she is the dominant or the breadwinner or whatever in the relationship, and he's unhappy with what he's doing, the relationship could never work, which is kind of misogynistic, but it's not really written misogynistic. But if you think about it, it is misogynistic. A lot of people were pointing that out in the reviews, and I agree with the statement. It just didn't, like, I've read worse. It didn't really bother me. But overall, Mal's just not, he's not an interesting enough character, and there was no point in his character progression where I thought that they made a good couple. He was kind of like the friend that she's in love with at the beginning of the book, and then there's like a love V somewhere, and then she ends up leaving him for a guy that she meets later that's very or that's better for her. Think like Gale and Peeta in Hunger Games, where she's in love with Gale at the beginning, but it ends up that they're really good friends but not really meant for each other in a romantic sense, but Peeta's really good for her. kind of that thing, but she actually ends up with the guy that she started out with. The world is still really cool. I like it. Be good. It was just the romance. So the prince, what was his name? I can't remember the prince's name off the top of my head for some reason. Nikolai, maybe? I think that's his name. Nikolai, he was the best character in here, but I don't think he should have ended up with Elena either because she's not good enough for him. So I'm excited to read the King of Scars duology because I'm 99% sure that it's about him. But next we are moving into the Six of Crows duology. I've already read Six of Crows, but it's been a couple years, so I'm going to reread it now. This takes place with completely different characters in a completely different part of the world, and it's a heist. So I will be back talking about that in just a second.
That's about all the energy you got left in you, isn't it?
Alright, so my library ended in the middle of me reading this, and I had to go buy another copy, even though I already own a copy, it's just in storage. So I have an ugly movie copy now. Anyway, Six of Crows is a reread for me. I read it, I want to say in 2019? That sounds right. 2018, 2019, 2020, somewhere around there. And this is way better than the Shadow and Bone trilogy. This doesn't have like the needless romance or the really big young adult tropes. This is a heist novel. If you're a fan of Lies of Locke Lamora, Kaz reminds me a lot of Locke, except for Locke is a bit more of a trusting character than Kaz is. Locke has real friends. Kaz does not seem to have any real friends. What else could I say about this? So the only problem I really have with this book is the age of the characters is ridiculous for what the story is and what they're experts in. I think the oldest character is 18 years old, so they're between the ages like 14 and 18, and they're all breaking into this like big prison, but they don't really mention their ages very much, so it's very easy to just imagine these characters in their 20s or 30s. So that's what I do in my head. These characters are not this young in my brain. They're much older. The events of this book take place a couple of years, I don't know how many, but years after the Shadow and Bone trilogy and in a completely different country. Though there are mention of characters in this book that were in Shadow and Bone. Though I have read this on its own, and you can read this without reading Shadow and Bone, I think the only thing that Shadow and Bone really does is help explain Grisha magic much, much better than this does. But the characters, they're not needed. The only other reason to read Shadow and Bone would be if you want to read the books before the television show, and then you you definitely have to read Shadow and Bone to read the King of Scars duology, because I'm pretty sure that follows one of the main characters from the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Though I haven't read it yet, so I could be wrong, but I'm reasonably sure. Anyway, heist story. They break into a prison to kidnap a prisoner who has made a drug that fucks Grisha up. Like it gives them like superpowers, but they become super addicted and then die. So really bad for Grisha, but really good for people who want to use Grisha, which is most of the world. So they're breaking into this prison to find the inventor of this drug and bring him back for a lot of money. High shit. Lots of twists and turns. Very fun to read. When I finished this book, I couldn't record, so I wanted to keep on reading and got halfway through this, but here is the screenshot of how I am for time. So I think I am only going to be able to get through this because these books are a lot thicker than the first three, so they're taking me more time to read. But anyway, I think that's all I want to say about Six of Crows. I gave this a 4-star. The first time I read it, it's going to stay at a 4-star. I very, very much like this story. Crooked Kingdom is going well so far, and I will be back in just a second for you to talk about how I felt about this. All right, I am 24 hours and 25 minutes in, and I am finally done with Crooked Kingdom, which will be the last book we see in this vlog because I hit the 24-hour mark, which means I will be reading this duology, which I don't know what it's called. The King of Scars duology, sure. I will be reading this later this year. But anyway, back to Crooked Kingdom. This was the second book in the this is the second book in the Six of Crows duology, and it was okay. I liked it more than the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but I liked it less than Six of Crows. Basically, at the end of Six of Crows, Kaz and the gang figured out they had been betrayed, and they are trying to fuck over the people who betrayed them, right? So get some money, screw some people's lives up, save themselves, live happily ever after. For the most part, it was low stakes. One person did die. I'm not going to tell you who, so it's not that much of a spoiler. But I didn't feel like the death was particularly necessary. And I felt like the middle of this book dragged a lot, and then the ending felt a little bit rushed. This I liked, but I don't really have anything to say about it. It was a heist book again, but where the Six of Crows was like a single heist, this was like multiple different heists and different progressions and things going wrong. Again, it reminds me a whole lot of Lies of Locke Lamora, but I think Lies is written better and for more of an adult audience, and the character of Locke Lamora is far more trusting of his friends than Kaz is. Kaz is a character I don't really particularly care for. I don't dislike him, but the kid's got problems. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this. That's kind of it. Not a high note to end this video on, and I am sorry this is a day late. Let me know your thoughts on the Grishaverse if you've read any of the books down in the comments below. Let me know if I should prioritize the last two books or if it's something that Six of Crows was the best book in the whole series and I don't really need to rush into them. But I will have them done by the end of the year regardless. I just don't know if I want to pick them up like February, March, or if I'm going to wait closer to the end of the year to read them. Anyway, I'll see you in a video on Tuesday. Bye!